welcome to the Stevo and Goody podcast. We just want to take an opportunity this real quick to welcome you. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about the trials and tribulations of a couple of
particularly good-looking hunters. Traipsing around the Australian bush.
two young, very good-looking and tall.
Yeah, tall. Freakishly tall.
Americans who are trapped down under, and our experiences living over here and hunting here and elsewhere around the world. We're going to get on with that today, so stay tuned.
It's the Stevo and Goody Show, live from...
Well, we're not really live.
We're not even close to live. In fact, by the time you're hearing this, we may even be dead. So, how's it going, mate?
Yeah, it's good, man. It's good.
Why don't we talk about your surgery? Steve, have you had surgery today? Or yesterday?
I did. I had a cyst removed yesterday.
Nice.
It
From your ovaries?
Yeah. Well, shh, you're not supposed to tell anybody. No, I had a cyst removed from my back. It was just a pain, really.
Did it hurt, or was it just unsightly?
Well,
it's hard to imagine anything on your body being unsightly.
Yeah, I know, because I am a Greek.
You are
god.
An Adonis-like figure.
It's amazing.
A stunningly handsome man.
It is true. It is true. Ask my wife. She'll tell you.
That's funny, because she's laughing hysterically in the corner there.
She tells me all the time I'm just a super handsome guy. Yeah, no, I had a cyst on my back, and it was quite painful, and it's been getting inflamed over and over. So finally got in and had them cut it out, and yeah, so it took a whopping 12 minutes. So the wife didn't even get all the way to the school before I was calling after she dropped me off.
Hey, woman, get back here.
Come back and pick me up. I'm all done. Yeah, so that's it, man.
Right.
But yeah, I've got a couple stitches in my back at the moment, so I'm being a little bit.
Did they give you any pain meds for some fun?
No, they said if you're sore, take some Panadol.
See, I'm doing like, end down. Give me the end
down. It doesn't bother me because I had major spinal surgery earlier in the year, so I have all that stuff anyway.
Dude, we need to crack that open before a podcast.
I know, right? Well,
hey,
for you.
Man, I love you, man.
I heard about how you are.
I get real loopy from that shit.
That's awesome.
Yeah, oh, dude, seriously, like I get...
We can't do that for the podcast because you already monopolized everything enough as it is.
What are you talking about?
You'd never shut up if I gave you something awesome like that.
Dude, I'd love you, man.
I know you do.
And I shut up all the time.
When you're sleeping?
Yeah.
Yeah? I thought you snored.
A rumor has it I snore, but I don't hear it. It's a fact.
Yeah, see, I had this dream last night that I was a tractor.
You know, red flag, right? You should let shit. So, getting back to your end down. So, your surgery, so you're not sore or anything, you're all right?
No, I'm all right. If I move my back just right, it's a little bit tender. But I'll be shooting on the weekend.
Cool. Yeah, I don't know if I'm shooting on the weekend. Again,
you don't ever shoot on the weekend. You're always working on the house that you don't.
We don't live in. No, so I think that's done. My delightful wife has suggested that she shouldn't work anymore because we have all this stuff at home, and I should fund the lifestyle to which she's become accustomed. Needless to say, it was a sore spot. Let's just say the argument got resolved when I woke up in a pool of my own blood, and I could eat solid foods again.
Oh, so is she quitting?
No, she's not. But the suggestion that I made that perhaps she needed to equally contribute to the financial position of the household didn't go over entirely as well as I would have hoped.
Is she still looking at going back to school?
Yeah, she's currently doing a TAFE course around horticulture. So,
nice.
Yes, it's all right. The problem is that apparently there's a bunch of knuckleheads in her course, and I think I just caught her in a bad week. So anyway, the long and the short of it is during Sunday I've got a riding lesson with my daughter. Well, I don't ride these things, but my daughter is pursuing an equestrian career. So we're going to this other kind of...
Can you have a career as an equestrian without owning a ranch?
I'm sure you can. I don't know how. I think you just have to own the horse. The problem is owning the horse is a little difficult.
Or is she thinking about like competing?
Yeah.
Like professionally?
Yeah, well, or certainly competing as an interest. I mean, I don't know if she's...
So what you're saying is she's going to spend a lot of your money to go and win ribbons.
Maybe.
And not much else.
Not much else, man. Yeah, right. I'm not doing it for a return. Let me put it to you that way.
Yeah, well, that's
It's not a wise investment. So, I'm, yeah, so that's what I'm doing.
It's an investment of love. I know exactly what those are.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
right.
You do what
and to be fair to my kid, it's not like she does a lot of other stuff. So she hasn't like years of ballet, piano. Like she's actually pretty chill in that sense. Yeah. Again, I really wish she would have just picked a hobby like
hunting.
Or or playing chess, something that didn't cost a lot of money. But anyway, so that's kind of my weekend.
Then you can buy her like $1,000 chess set and be like, oh,
I'm still way ahead.
You're kind of good for life.
Yeah, I'm way ahead. I could pick you 2,000. So, and as an aside, we are looking at horses to buy. And I've got a few kind of lined up, and let's just say it's not an inexpensive proposition.
Now, I thought the riding lessons were on Saturdays.
This is because of the show in the city that we're in.
Oh, is that why?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
So it's just this week.
Yeah.
It's not a regular thing.
No, absolutely not. I'm not doing
I was going to say, because if
I
have to give up my shooting afternoons with you, I'm going to lose my cool.
Yeah. And I tend to agree. I'm not going to give those up. In this circumstance,
you have for the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of my weekend. I don't have the end down, so if you want that would help the weekend.
You want to sleep well?
No, it doesn't make me sleep. It makes me goofy and laugh.
Well, we'll have to do that on a day when we're not podcasting.
No, I think we do it on a podcast today.
Or shooting bows.
oh, that would be better. 2 or 3 end down. Get out on the range. What could go wrong?
2 or 3 end down, you're not going to crap for a month.
Nah, please. Doesn't affect.
He's like, I drink so much coffee that.
Seriously, man. Honestly, like I remember Christina, our friend, said, "Oh, it's going to make you, it's going to clog you up." I was like, "Mate, bitch, this ain't going to clog me up. Give me 2 of these things."
Yeah.
The problem is anything wrong with me, so I think
I've actually got Targin, which is better.
Ooh.
It's the same thing, but it has the other stuff on it as well that reduce like being bound up and all that kind of stuff. Because I had to take it long term after my surgery.
Yeah, because your spine and your back's been bothering you for years. So. Yeah,
well, that's what happens when you treat your body like an amusement park. Between riding bulls and playing football and wrestling and teaching acrobatic taekwondo and flying kicks and just car accidents, semi accidents, just I've beaten my body up pretty bad and I'm paying for it now, and I'll be 39 in a couple months and I'm
going on 90,
and I feel like an old man, kind of like Josh was saying in the last podcast.
See, the difference is I'm an old man and I feel and look like an old man.
You're only 5 years older than me.
Mm-mm.
What are you, like 80?
I'm 283 years old, man.
Oh yeah, that's it.
283. And the funny thing is, because I did a lot of stuff with weightlifting and all that my body's thanking me for.
Speaking of 283, wasn't that your score on the last 20 rounds we did? Isn't that your score on the last round we did? 283.
What round? Oh yeah, out of 800.
Out of 400.
Maybe 203. No, I stopped keeping score on that shit. I've just learned I'm never going to compete in archery. My goal is to get good enough to hunt and stay good enough to hunt.
Speaking about hunting, today on the podcast, we got Niel Bekker from Redsand Safaris.
Very cool.
That's going to be we're doing the interview. Yep, from Redsand Safaris in South Africa in the Limpopo province, which is pretty cool. It's just outside of Johannesburg.
No, I thought it was.
It's 2 hours northeast of Johannesburg.
Yes.
And so, beautiful area. And so we're going to be talking about a lot of really
cool stuff,
inspiring things. Actually, we're going to talk about like the difference is, and we're going to talk about some of the politics around hunting in Africa. And we're going to talk about broadheads a little bit more because we like to talk about broadheads.
Which tranquilizer he likes to use, but that's right. Actually more for the Friday night, not the actual hunt.
That's it.
Excellent. Good. So that's going to be. I think that's a good conversation. That's a really good.
Have you ever dreamed of hunting Africa, but you thought it was just out beyond your reach? Redsand Safaris is situated in the heart of the Bushveld in the Limpopo province of South Africa. With plentiful hunting opportunities in the African bush, along with its diverse bird life and natural beauty, Redsands is a must for any adventurous hunter. Redsands boasts a wide range of game, from the smallest and tiny of steenbok to the mighty and dangerous Cape buffalo. At Redsand Safari, they not only cater for rifle shooters, but they also cater for the bow hunter. So no matter what kind of hunting you're into, they've got you covered. All you need is a spirit of adventure and good aim. Welcome to Redsand Safaris, where professional hunter and outfitter Niel Bekker will work with you on a personal level, one-on-one, to make sure that you have the exact hunt that you are looking for. If you're keen on getting this Africa dream going, contact us directly at contact.rssafaris, all one word, at gmail.com. And remember to leave us the country that you're living in so that we can get you out the correct brochure and price list. Is it time to make some dreams happen? I think it is. I'll be out there next year. Will you? During this section of the episode, we're going to be interviewing South African outfitter and professional hunter Niel Bekker. So, Niel, welcome to the show.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me on, guys. As Steve already said, I'm all the way from sunny South Africa, early morning here. Happy to be here.
So tell us, I guess, a little bit about yourself, both in terms of your, I guess, personal and professional life, as well as a little bit about your outfit. Where are you based in South Africa?
Right, yeah, so first of all, I was born and raised here in the African bush. My family has been farming here for, ever since the sun has been shining on Africa. So I am, as Stevo said, the outfitter of Redsand Safaris here based in the Limpopo province of South Africa. I also have a day job, which I work as a medical orthotist and prosthetist. So basically what that means is we make arms and legs for amputees and help them rehabilitate, get them back into society. And then on the weekends, I guide clients and fulfill their African dreams.
Fantastic, mate.
I love that. That's awesome.
That's excellent. You could combine those two. We'll just have to figure out how.
Yeah.
Maybe set up some kind of automated kind of arm that can...
Or prosthetics for hunters.
Yeah, making camouflage legs and stuff. So... yeah, it's it's kind of two worlds apart. I mean, how do you get from a corporate hospital structure to the African bush? But I mean, I've had a passion for mechanics ever since I started working on the farm and stuff. So it was more the mechanical part of making a leg, as you can say, for people that got me into the business. And then from there, archery also, it's a lot of mechanics and a lot of the same principles that apply. And that, I mean, hunting has always been a part of how I grew up and the way we feed our families. And so we hunt to provide food on the table. That's the bottom line.
So what about you're a professional hunter and outfitter. You own Redsand Safaris. Can you tell us a little bit more about your outfitting business?
Redsand Safaris, the start of Redsand Safaris comes back to probably 30 years ago, where the very first African farm my dad owned was called Redsand, and that's where the dream started. I mean, that's where I started walking barefoot in the sand, and ever since then I dreamed about becoming an outfitter. Had the opportunity to guide for several other outfitters when I was still younger. And then we bought a new farm about 6 years ago, which had good facilities and had a good location for hunting. And then I did the National Outfitters course, where you go through a 12-day course where you really learn about marketing, how to properly address clients, how to do things not the African way, but I mean a more civilized way of having people over. And then from there we registered at Nature Conservation, started with the first clients, and now we currently hunting with people from Scotland to the US, hoping to get people from Australia in next year. So we are very blessed in that sense.
Very good.
So are you registered with FASA?
Well, FASA is the Professional Hunting Association of South Africa. So as a professional hunter, I am registered with FASA, but as an outfit, I am not.
Okay, all right.
Haven't gone around to it yet.
I just was curious because I remember looking at the FASA list, and I can't remember why, and President de Klerk was on that list, which I thought was kind of funny. And somebody said that he actually had a PH license, which I think was kind of an odd circumstance to be in. I think he's got to be dead now or close to it. So I don't know that he's going to be guiding any clients, but very interesting.
No, I don't know. So the thing is, there's two separate courses to become an outfitter or a professional hunter. So a professional hunter just basically means you've got the paperwork to guide clients, and then the outfitter is now you can actually get clients, do marketing overseas. And so basically professional hunters work for outfitters, but a professional hunter can become an outfitter as well. but there's so many professional hunters around the country. It's very hard to know who's actually actively hunting and who's actively doing marketing nowadays.
Yeah, no, I can. It's like lawyers in Washington D.C., mate. They're everywhere. Excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
So how big is your farm?
Well, so we own two farms, which is we call it base camp. So that's where everything starts and finishes. It's about in total 2,000 hectares, which is about almost 4,000 acres, just a bit over 4,000 acres. But that's probably one of the smaller properties we hunt on. So I've got hunting rights from different landowners in the area, and we've got a combined hunting area of 10,000 hectares, which is about 20,000 acres.
That's a lot of hunting area.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually quite blessed with there's not a high density of outfitters in the area that I hunt in. I'm about the only outfitter in let's say a 100 square kilometer range. So I really benefit from the local farmers. So we go into contract with them. They give us a list of species that they have in a specific area, and then they benefit from them. We use their local trackers and skinners, so everybody through the chain benefit from us utilizing their land as well.
Excellent.
That is good.
Sounds like you've got good broad community support for your operation, which I think is critical, particularly when you hear about critics of hunting in Africa, and in the US there's some of it, but I think it's in Australia there's a fair amount of anti-hunting sentiment here, and I think the only time African hunting ever gets brought up is the
negative stuff.
Negative, the Cecil the lion crap and all that stuff. And I think what they miss is kind of what you're talking about. That notion that every hunter that comes in to South Africa contributes not just to one or two people or an operation or for themselves, that actually has a flow-on effect to the entire community.
Yeah, agree. That's a very, that's an open wound subject, but it's something we have to discuss always. And I always call it a double-edged blade, because exactly when you come to South Africa to hunt, we then are able to create jobs right through from drivers to trackers to skinners. I have professional hunters working for me. I've got catering staff, housekeepers that clean, and all those people benefit from a foreign currency. And that's a very important topic, is to that word foreign currency. If I go to the doctor and the doctor goes to the shop owner and the shop owner comes to hunt on my farm, that's just currency that we just swap around hands. Nobody actually makes any money. But the moment we have foreign currency flowing into our community, it strengthens the community, because that's money, not money from home. It's money from overseas, and that's very important for us to keep that constant flow of foreign currency coming into our communities, and then we're building up our community that way.
Great, absolutely great.
So what are the costs like for, let's say, not specific numbers, because I know it's different for every country, but what kind of costs and like hidden fees, and like what happens if somebody wants to take an extra trophy? What's kind of the process that you do there?
Yeah, so the whole process starts when someone is actually interested in coming to hunt. I work with that client specifically in order to know what is their needs and what is their, well, I would say trophy list, which is always a vague list, because it's still hunting, it's not shopping. And then we start out with a base package, which is an all-inclusive fee, and then from there on they can select different animals based on the opportunity to hunt those animals from a price list. But you can basically select a few animals, get your accommodation, and get a package. And then from that package, you put your wallet away. And then the moment when you get back into your own country, it will be the first time you take your wallet out. So we provide an all-inclusive, no hidden fees, no extra cost type of service, which is just easier for every hunter to do budgeting on. If you've got extra fees or hunting per inch or hunting per animal, it just makes it a lot more difficult for them to be able to budget on, okay, I want to spend this amount of money, let's do it.
So obviously, if so they buy a package and it's package A, and they show up and they see another species that sits outside of that package. Clearly, there's the opportunity to pay an extra trophy fee if they want to take the wallet out again for that species.
Exactly.
Is that right?
What I always do is when I do packages with clients, I stay away from specific animals. So a package A would most likely include, let's say, one animal of a specific size, let's say a big trophy animal. So it can be a good trophy of a number of different species, because you might sit in a blind where you have a very nice representative of a certain species, and now that species is not on the list. Then you kind of sitting here, now you've got to work out how much is this and how much am I going to pay for this. So we really give them a selection of, let's say, 8 or 9 different species for that one package.
Oh, great. Okay. And that's based largely on size and kind of category of animal, right? So you're not going to, yeah. So you're not going to swap an impala for an eland, for example. Really.
So we do it, we do it small animals, medium animals, and then you get your large plains game animals, which would include eland and kudu and waterbuck.
So just a quick question. A lot of guys can ask this particular question, and that's the malaria in South Africa. Is that something that travelers coming in that we should be aware of? Is it something that we should maybe get the shot or take used to be the big orange pill? Is that something that we should be looking at before we come?
Yeah, well, South Africa has malaria areas, and that's a good question to ask. A lot of people get very expensive shots when they come to hunt in South Africa for malaria. So malaria is mostly based in the very low-lying areas in the low veld. But in the central bushveld, we are in a completely malaria-free area. We are about 400 kilometers from the nearest malaria area. So we land in a malaria-free area, we hunt in a malaria-free area. The only time when we do go into malaria areas is when we do photographic safaris to the Kruger National Park. But then I usually beforehand tell the guys to either get malaria pills or shots, or I get them for them here in South Africa, which is a lot more cost effective than getting them actually in the States.
Okay.
Right. Well, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
That's good to know too.
Yeah, that is. I mean, because I remember I went in 2000 because I lived there for a year, but I went a couple of years before to hunt. I remember having to get all of the shots, and I can't remember if it was expensive, but I think it's good to know that if you're running around and you just don't get a chance to get them, that you've got the opportunity to get them with Niel, because I think that would be a bit of convenience as well, right? One less thing you got to worry about.
So Niel, let me get your perspective on canned hunts, because we've talked about that a fair bit on most of our podcasts. We mentioned canned hunts in a very negative way. What's your perspective on a canned hunt?
We here at Redsand Safaris, we always try to give an authentic hunt. I mean, we all read books back when Roosevelt and all those guys hunted Africa. I mean, it was wild Africa, and they hunted vast open spaces from horseback, and I mean, those times have they're gone. I mean, we don't have that anymore. So we try to give an experience to people as close as we can to that. So we don't hunt any small enclosed areas, which is defined as canned hunting, where you can basically book an animal and you are 100% guaranteed of that animal. So I steer away from those type of people that want to hunt, because you do get people who specifically say, I want this and I'm not leaving without this. And then I try to get people that want an animal on a free roaming, chasing the animal, well, not physically chasing, but hunting that animal on its turf, on its land, and kind of outsmarting that animal. And that's what makes the trophy a lot more worthwhile than the actual mount on the wall. So out of a hunting perspective, we keep it to hunting. So you could actually call it canned shooting, because hunting in a small enclosure, with 100% success rate, it's not really hunting. Yeah, we go through a process where they do a land inspection from nature conservation side. So you have to have a sufficient amount of land available to be able to get your outfitter's permit. So I know you always get people that will make misuse of certain smaller areas to get a better success rate. But you can speak to any hunter that has ever hunted with Redsand Safaris, and they can tell you it's not easy, it's not guaranteed, but it's fun as hell.
Yeah, and that's the important bit. Of course, the one exception, we were talking about this before that came in. Canned hunts are bad and awful unless you want to hunt wild cans. Then we've got a whole different kind of kettle of fish there, right? So we could talk a little bit about the fair chase hunting of cans, but assuming that's not what we're talking about, your view is that canned hunting, as we commonly know it, is probably a pretty bad thing. Do you see a lot of it in the industry there? Or a lot of it's probably unfair. Do you see it still prevalent? Because it seems like it was kind of talked a lot about 10, 15 years ago as kind of this, kind of more of a money-making exercise, really. Do you see it still?
I don't see it in the industry that I am so much, but sometimes I do get a little whiff of it when someone comes to Africa for 7 days and he shoots 20 different big game species. Then I kind of look at it in a way that say, okay, I mean, I hunt a lot. You're talking about 3 animals per day. That's that's an impressive strike rate. So I'm not saying it was a canned hunt, but I kind of getting 1 animal per day
Sounds
per
like
client. That's
Right.
good. So you talking about 20 animals in 7 days? That's almost impossible. So then I kind of see, okay, maybe there might be a snake in the grass, but let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say they were terrific hunters and they really made their opportunities count.
Very, very, very optimistic view, Mr. Becker. Very, very, very non-cynical perspective. But I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean,
And I guess
they hide it quite well. I mean, people who still do can hunting, they know the risks involved in hunting something in a small area. So it's not like they're going to post videos of fences the whole day because that makes them look bad. So they just maybe
yeah,
turn the animal away from the fence to take the picture, and then you'll never know about it. So I don't see it firsthand because I don't do it at all. Out of a personal standpoint, that's not how I want to make my money. And if that is how you make money, then I'll rather be poor for the rest of my life. But if somebody shoots 20 animals in 7 days, yeah, it's something fishy about that.
yeah,
Yeah.
something's not right there. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So speaking of hunting styles, one of the things Steve and I were talking about was in Australia, probably the single most common style would be spot and stalk. In America, particularly in the eastern part of the country,
Eastern,
it's
probably Midwest as well.
Yeah, Midwest. Is stands or hinds?
Yeah, tree stands.
In South Africa, I would imagine blinds or hides are probably the most common. What options do you give clients for Redsand Safaris?
Yeah, that's actually quite because I enjoy the planning of a hunt so much, and I work with each client. I mean, each client has their specific needs. Hunting with a guy in a wheelchair, you're not going to get into any stands, or you're not going to do a lot of spot and stalking. And then hunting with a very young, fit guy from I Hunt Fit, they can get into any situation. So I really like tree stands because you can play the wind a lot better.
Okay.
You can really plan a hunt. You can
Yes. Yeah.
you can move around. You can really be proactive about a certain situation, and that really molds around my personality a lot better than hunting a static blind. I do hunt blinds. 50% of the static hunting I do would be from a pit blind or a box blind, but I've got a lot of tree stands which I place in specific areas according to the wind. And then we do spot and stalk hunting as well. A side note to remember is we have probably the
Good.
most predators of every country or every continent in the world. So
Yeah.
our game, they are constantly being stalked
Yeah.
by leopard and hyena and caracal and jackal and serval. So it's really, they are really aware of their surroundings, and anything within a certain perimeter, they they really quite see you. They see you coming from a far way out. So spot and stalk hunting in Africa, your strike rate goes down about 1 in 15 stalks. You will be able to get a shot.
Dramatically.
That's not killing something. I mean, that's just getting to full draw on a bow, spot and stalk hunting. And with
Yeah.
the rifle clients, I mean, we do 50% rifle, 50% bow and arrow. With the rifle clients, we do spot and stalk only. We do an authentic free chase spot and stalk hunting, which is very nice. We would drive to an area or to a lookout point, get the binoculars, identify animals in areas, plan a hunt, do the stalk, and if it's successful, then it's really a good plan coming together.
Yeah, and I think with your clients with in a wheelchair disabilities, you probably do like a spot and roll. Is that kind of... Sorry, man. I just have this image of this bloke rolling after a... I had to. I'm sorry. It was inappropriate. I couldn't help myself. So okay. So that's good. Well, good. Then you've got a variety of choices, right? I think that's important, because I know a lot of Australians have a fair amount of prejudice against hunting in Africa based on the perception that it's all blind or high hunting. Because I think because it's so common here, because spot and stalk is probably the most common. What I've told people who've gone or who are preparing to go is it's probably easy to think of blind hunting or stand hunting as easy, but like you've said, your animals are about 1,000 times more jumpy. I mean, we've got deer here that are edgy, but nothing compared to a springbuck, right? So I think what I say to them is do a couple of days in the stand or the hide, and then if you really want to spot and stalk after you've knocked something over, a couple of animals over, then go out and do it. So it sounds to me like you've got that option if somebody wants to split their time.
We really are. If you have a long enough time and the wind's right and the weather plays along, then I would like to do some spot and stalk hunting, because there's a lot of different things that you can still do while walking and while hunting on foot. You see a lot more bird life and small rodent species while chasing an animal. But when you're stuck in a stand, you don't see the landscape, you don't see the different trees, and while hunting on foot, it's a lot more than just trying to locate animals and trying to shoot them. You really get a bigger sense of the fauna and flora, from the small little turtle species we have, walking up to giraffes and stuff. So it's more than just hunting something or shooting something when you're out walking around and spotting animals.
So if you were gonna say you had some bow hunters from some short, particularly good-looking bow hunters from America
Australia,
who happen to live in Australia, to come around, and they were wanting to do some bow hunting, and they decided they wanted to do some spot and stalk with their bows. What kind of options, I guess, are there for something like that?
Well, firstly, I would take them to the range and see if they can actually shoot at a further distance than 20 yards. I've heard stories about these Australian Americans that they might be able to shoot, but I would really just double check that first of all. Because
I don't know which ones you're talking about.
At least half of us can shoot.
Go on.
On a spot and stalk, you increase your hunting distance to about, well, I would say the furthest a hunter would shoot is about, if he can do a 6-inch target at a certain distance, that would be the cutoff distance. And then your gear is also, because you're going to walk quite a few miles in a day, you need to be packing lightweight shoes that can really take a hammering but still walk very softly, with a very soft broad sole. And then the communication between the hunter and the client beforehand, you really need to sort out what's the type of animals you want to go after, what's the ranges, what's the angles, because these are not topics you can kind of discuss when the animal is standing at 40 yards in front of you. Then you kind of need to know already, all right, are we going to do this? Is the angle okay? Is the trophy good? Because that communication between the professional hunter and the hunter is going to take a split second between a good shot and a no shot.
Unless, of course, the animal is drugged and tethered to a post.
Then
we can talk about
it
that
the
stuff for
whole
quite some
day.
time.
I mean, you and the vet who drugged the animal. We can really, we can give you a.
That's it, mate. We can have a little
measure
lunch.
it even for you beforehand, and we can. So it's easy stuff.
It's a quality service you provide. I like it.
Yeah, don't worry about Goody. He likes to hunt at the petting zoo.
That's right. We'll talk about that later. Because if you can stop at the petting zoo as a warm up before you go to the safari, then you're laughing, man.
Yeah,
You really test your gear on some semi-tame goats.
Some goat. Some. I like to test my stalking skills at the petting zoo, but that got me in a lot of trouble with my parole officer, so it wasn't good. So anyway, moving right along.
So we're out there, we're let's say we have the good wind and the weather's on our side, and we decided we wanted to do some spot and stalk with our bows. How big of an issue are the predators for guys that are stalking with bows?
Not as big as a problem, because most of our predators are nocturnal or ambush hunters. So the nocturnal animals like hyena, you're not going to see them in daytime, and really ambush hunters like leopard, they are probably the best bushveld hunters in Africa. So they're going to see you long before you see them, and then they'll just get out of the area. We are not their intended prey, and they are not our intended prey. So we kind of stay clear of each other. The only place you would see a leopard is on the trail camera when they're coming in for a drink. But I've never leopard.
So you don't hunt them?
No, we don't have permits for leopard in South Africa
for
the whole of 2017 and 2018. We had 0 permits. So it's and if you shoot a leopard without a permit, that's about 15 years in jail. So I don't know if you guys are keen on doing some jail time, but I'm okay.
No, not really.
Well, no, my love life is sorted already, thanks. But no, so
don't drop the soap.
Yeah, that's it.
I'll get you some soap on a rope.
So okay, so is it a CITES thing? So CITES has said for 2017 and 18 you can't hunt any leopard.
Well, no, it's a nature conservation thing. So CITES, you got to understand, CITES is a whole different ballgame. CITES stands for the Conservation of International Trade of Endangered Species. So that's only with the trading of those species. So that's you can come to South Africa, shoot a animal, but if it's on a CITES list, you cannot ship that animal to wherever it needs to go. So this is a nature conservation permit that you have to get to be able to physically kill the animal. CITES is a whole different thing. That's only to do with the exporting and importing of certain dead animals, or a part of that animal, whether it be an eggshell or a bone or ivory or skin or the whole trophy.
All right. Nice. So there's no hunting a leopard?
No hunting leopard, unfortunately, guys.
Excellent.
Not at the moment.
Well, that's great.
Not at the moment.
Okay. All right.
That's sad. Makes me want to cry just a little bit.
That's all right. That's all right.
It's on my list, but that's all right. We'll just have to wait till they do let permits come out, and then we'll have to go and see Niel at that time. Yeah. And yeah.
Well, there's different ways to skin a cat, a leopard in this case. So we do have permits in Namibia currently, so we can just head on over to Namibia and hunt leopard there.
Brush up on our German a little bit. Get going. Nice. So let's talk about another issue that Stevo and I have discussed on a number of fronts.
Sorry.
Yes, it's the topic of broadheads.
Broadheads.
So I'm a bit old school. I'm a bit of a traditionalist.
Okay.
I'm a two-blade man, and Stevo is quite wrongly a fan of multi-blade heads. And all joking aside, there's a whole range of reasons. I won't bore you with why I generally support that view. But what do you see in your client base? I'd imagine you see the breadth of heads, whether it's two-blade through to mechanical to multi-blade, the whole shooting match.
Yeah, well,
What's been your observations?
Well, I see everything. I see from the good to the bad to the weird looking. I would say getting something that's going to give, well, bells and whistles, first of all. Anything that's kind of moving or can move on the airplane, or when someone throws your bow around in baggage, kind of stay clear of that. Anything that works with a battery on your bow, stay clear of that. But broadhead wise, something that you have confidence in, first of all. Don't try the latest and greatest that you've read about in some magazine over in Australia. If you've shot plentiful animals with an old blunt two blade, rather bring that than going on my recommendation with something you don't have confidence in. But I've seen most broadheads work when they are well placed. A lot of broadheads who fail when they are very badly placed, and then the blame always goes to the equipment. It was the wrong broadhead, or it was too light of an arrow. So something that's sharp, that cuts on contact, and that's going to be able to kill from the small steenbok to the big eland. That's kind of what I would stay away from specifics. If somebody tells me I'm shooting this, uh, it's been working well for me over here in the States, or then I tell them bring it along, and if they have confidence in that specific broadhead, then do it. Personally, I like more mechanical type of broadheads because I get good accuracy on them,
Wow.
and
Wow.
you just replace the blades and you're ready to go again. So lately I've been shooting more mechanicals than fixed blades, and they work for me. I put the animals down, and yeah.
And any particular, without putting product placement here, any particular heads that have
Lately,
impressed
so
you in terms
I
of
try to, before
brands?
I put any critics on a specific broadhead, I try to shoot at least 10 animals with a specific type of broadhead before I really can get a good sample of it. So for the past 2 seasons, I've been using actually a hybrid broadhead. It's from Muzzy. It's called the Trocar Hybrid, which has a fixed two blade built into a opening up wider, well, kick out two blades. So it really gives you that extra penetration that a normal two blade would give you, but it also helps with these marginal shots, having something that kicks out to a cutting surface. So
Yeah,
that's
a
actually,
bigger
I
cutting
would
area.
really recommend that to anybody, because you can shoot a heavy boned animal with it
Okay.
because it's going to penetrate. Yeah, I really like the penetrating.
Okay.
Yeah, because of the two blade. So
Because of
that's maybe
the two
something
blade
you
bit,
and
yeah.
Stevo can work on, getting a hybrid broader that's gonna shoot like a fixed blade but cut like a mechanical. So
Oh no, I'm not using that hippie shit. Don't fuck around. I'm not playing around with that shit.
I actually,
It's good enough for my two blade was good enough for my grandpappy. It's good enough for me. That's all I'm gonna say.
I actually used the Muzzy True Car.
yeah, I've shot about seven or eight animals with it, and really I can tell you that's a terrific broadhead. And
I gotta say, it made a definite impact on the goats I put through.
yeah,
Because I shot through a couple of goats, and I tell you what,
Hold on, wait a
they
minute, Neil.
just dropped.
No,
There
we're
was-
actually talking about feral goats, not petting zoo goats.
Yeah, not petting zoo
sorry.
goats, feral
In
goats.
Australia, one species that we hunt are feral goats, and they actually are far more sporting than petting zoo goats. So no, I can see that.
Unless Goody's hunting them, because if Goody's hunting them, there's some dueling banjos in the back, and you hear somebody from Deliverance going, "Hey boy, you got a purr to mouth."
That's me.
goody, but it's actually surprising to have you. I mean, on the air. I mean, you being a guy who hunts with your grandfather's broadhead. I mean, still walking to work probably and sending a homing.
That's it, man. I'm not getting.
I would have thought they'd have rusted by now.
Yeah.
I would have thought they'd been rusty by now.
That's
Just saying.
Well, Neil, the funny thing is my grandfather grew up in the Lower East Side of New York and never hunted a day in his life. Right? So the joke behind the grandpappy thing is my grandfather wouldn't have a clue. In fact, he'd think we were bloody idiots for going hunting because there's always a good deli around the corner. Why would we bother, right? So,
Hey, how about we get a nice pastrami on rye?
that's it. So the thing I find with the two blades is I've used them, that they work. There's a fairly strong view about one particular species we hunt here, and I've just kind of carried that over. And I love giving Stevo a hard time because he gets all fussy about these broadhead debates, and I just like taking a firm position. So. But it's good I guess it's changed.
Be careful, I'm going to put you in a firm position.
Yeah, promises.
It does
So
change.
there for a year, and I remember back then, this was a number of years ago now, it was kind of taboo to bring mechanicals. Three blades were different, like the Muzzy 4 and 3 blades and all that.
Yeah.
But the mechanicals were kind of real taboo at the time. A lot of guys didn't like them.
Yeah, the first mechanicals we had back then, I'm not going to name any names, were terrible. those things, they did not work. I mean, we had very small entry wounds and only one hole in the animal. So that's probably why, if you speak to someone that's been bow hunting for a number of years, they usually more traditionalist in their broadhead choice because they had the bad of mechanicals. Whereas people who started bow hunting, let's say post 2010, they only saw the good side of mechanicals and they would most likely be very pro mechanical. For me, being a mechanicalist, I really like the mechanics and really like to test out the certain mechanics. And I am allowed to shoot more animals per year than the normal guy. So I really like testing broadheads. And then when someone tells me I'm bringing this broadhead, then I can really tell them, okay, it works, or no, it's not going to work.
And what about, just one last thing on this, Cape Buffalo? Because I've hunted buff with a bow, and my view is that two blades are pretty much it. A big, heavy two blade is where to go. What do you think?
That's a different story. And now we're getting to pachyderms. I mean, you're not bringing any mechanical blade nowhere close to a buffalo. So that's asking for someone to get killed. And because buffalo, they've got very wide ribs and very narrow spaces between the ribs. So you're looking at a heavy front of center setup with a small broadhead that can slip in between those ribs. If you putting a shovel on the front of your arrow, you're just going to hit a rib and have zero penetration, and you're going to make life a lot worse for myself and my tracker, who's going to walk right in the front on the danger part of a buffalo.
Oh, so it's all about you.
Yeah, because I'll be walking in the back, let me tell you, man.
I'm going to be back and having a cuppa.
Yeah, we had a client when I lived there that wounded a buff. And I had to go out with, and I'm telling you right now, I was shitting bricks the whole time. It was a real thick area, and I thought, oh, mate,
Yeah, buffalo, they are super smart, and they circle around back on their trails. They stick to the thick stuff. We are constantly on the ground looking for blood, looking for tracks, and the clients all the way back having a coke, taking pictures of a bird or something. And we sweating out kilograms of sweat in the front.
No, man, I got stuck in that front party, man.
With a buffalo client, that's training and communication and formulas, working out momentum, working out kinetic energy, getting a quiet, heavy setup, and that's not something you just decide and one morning say, hey, let's go shoot a buffalo.
So what do you recommend for buffalo? I mean, are there any particular bows or weights of arrows or particular broadheads that you prefer for particularly hunting Cape buffalo? Like, can I do that with a 70-pound bow?
Yeah, you can do it with a modern 70-pound bow. I would not go back 10 years with a 70-pound. With a really modern 70-pound bow, 700 grains and more, and I would go with a good Ashby head, anything like a Maasai 220 grain arrow broadhead. That'll give you a good FOC front of center, which would really keep the momentum forward. I mean, you don't want any side momentum, so no weight in the back of the arrow. So 800 to 850 grains, that's a good, and then keeping the shot distance to less than 30 yards. That's probably a golden for buffalo setup.
Now, I know you used to work in a bow shop as well. Particularly for somebody, say my size, I have a 26-inch straw, which makes my ability to carry to have an 800 grain arrow shoot effectively out of my bow very difficult. So what would you recommend in something like that?
So I would really try to firstly months beforehand, try to bump you to 75 pounds or maybe 80 if you can muster up 80. I mean, when I say shooting 80 pounds, I don't mean drawing a bow and anchoring. I mean making a good shot. So I'd rather take a 70-pound good shot than a 80-pound terrible shot. So, and then you can do buffalo. I would go a little bit lighter then. With a 26, 27-inch draw, try to go to 75 pounds, maybe bump down to 700 grain total arrow, nothing less than 650. If you want to go 650, rather leave it. And yeah, keep that shot distance close to get that arc down, because you're going to shoot with a bit of an arc. But I've actually done buffalo setup for women, where they shot 65 pounds, 650 grain arrows, and then they just keep it real close and keep a big sticker and a good tree close by. So.
Because the other alternative is a 416 Rigby.
Yeah,
fucking around, right?
Yeah, that's a good alternative.
That's the other one.
But I mean,
so like because my normal arrow, because it's so short, my normal arrow usually settles in right around the 400 mark.
Yeah,
and without putting a heavier broadhead or a heavier field tip in it, I tend to settle right around the 400. And I shoot Easton axis, so they're 9.6 grains per inch. But like I said before, because they're so short, I use a lot of that grain weight because of the width. And an axis is a lighter arrow, but it's one of the heavier of the arrows.
Yeah. So that's,
if that makes sense for a carbon.
400 grain is extremely light for Africa. I try to get guys to be around the 500 grain mark. 500 to 520 is a good for an average length, like draw length. So for you, I would just, the only thing I would change if you would come to Africa is maybe do a 50 to 70 grain brass insert. Then you're increasing your FOC, getting to 450, and then 450 with a good broadhead. That's going to work. I mean, that's more than enough. So. No,
even on a cape?
No, I'm back to playing game now.
Sorry, I can answer that one, Neil. No. Yeah, sorry. Yes. Emphatically no.
Yeah, that's okay. I just, because, you and I have been having a lot of conversations because I'm trying to figure out if I'm coming out this next July or the following one. So we're just trying to, it's one of the things that's on my list, and we've talked about it in the podcast before that, the big 5 are on my bucket list. And even though some of them I can't hunt at the moment, there are some that I can. And I know you have a fantastic herd of Cape buffalo on the lands that you guys have.
Buffalo.
And so, it's kind of something that I have in the back of my head. If I can come up with enough cash, that's something I want to think about. So it'll make a big difference to me if I can physically do it with the materials that I have and the equipment that I have, or if I'd have to get all new equipment. But I reckon in that situation, I think I would just take
maybe
2 bows.
Even
one bow set up for buff and one set up for everything
that's
else.
probably going to be the best. That's a good and a bad thing, because if you do a hunt in Africa and you want to shoot a buffalo, then if you can maybe do with that buffalo setup, broadheads, arrows, a bow, everything. If you can take a few plains game species before a buffalo hunt, let's say maybe 2 or 3 days prior to a hunt, you take plains game, and that really boosts your confidence a lot in that specific setup. I mean, you really know it hits the mark, and that's for us quite nice. And now you're bringing 2 bows, you're shooting plains game on the one, and now all of a sudden you're taking a brand new, not tested setup, and now you're going to do Africa's dangerous animal. So that's it's good and a bad thing, but maybe just do 2 different sites. Maybe site to one side, or make different marks on your side, and take 1 bow with 2 different arrow setups.
Well, that's what I do right now. So I've got some cheaper arrows that I use for goat hunting from now on, and so I actually have a second sight that I have set up for those arrows, and I just take those when I hunt those, and I put my other sight back on for the others. But
yeah, that'll work perfectly. Then you can really get some confidence behind your bow. And that really helps. Confidence helps a lot in any situation.
We've been talking a lot about in some of the recent podcasts about how buck fever, and we talked a little about that. So we talked a little bit with Josh, who's been out there with you. In our previous episode, we talked to him about how about the buck fever, and he said he got it real bad on his first one, which was his Impala. And we've been talking about that. I know Goody's had a considerable amount of it over the years, and I've never really had it, but I'm assuming that when I see a giant eland or something like that, my heart's going to be thumping and I'll be falling out of the tree.
Yeah, you're going to die inside. I mean, buck fever, that's an actual thing. That is not a debatable subject. I've been hunting Africa since I was 7, and I am blessed with the worst buck fever you can imagine. So me and Josh were sitting in a small little tree overlooking a very good spot for kudu. And when he shot his kudu, we shook the leaves off of that tree. I mean, we couldn't even communicate with each other. It was a warmish day. I started freezing inside. I had to take a walk around the area just to calm myself, and I wasn't even behind the bow, so I could not imagine how he felt. So that is it's something I really,
Maybe I'm a
yeah, maybe you are a sociopath. I mean,
maybe I am a sociopath because I just don't. When I see it, it's just like, oh, I'm gonna put my arrow right there, and I start going through my checklist, hit full draw. Yep, okay, I'm using the right pin. Yep, I've got my sight bubbles in the right spot. I got the right angle. I'm gonna make sure I've got good back tension. I'm gonna do a nice release, clean follow through, keep my arm up, don't let it drop. And then once I release and I see it go through, that's when my heart picks up.
yeah. Well, Goody, we can obviously hear he's never been to Africa. Because
That's right. That's right.
Yes.
The moment
And I expect it. I expect
That's
it.
it.
The moment you sit in a blind and a herd of 30 wildebeest come dusting in, I mean, all that goes out of the window. Like all that anchoring pins and yardages and all that like goes out of the window, and it's just your heart racing, and you're trying to keep the sweat out of your palms and trying to make a good shot. So it's really important to practice beforehand. So all that you spoke about, the anchoring, getting to full draw, having a good let off, that needs to happen automatically, because thinking about that is not an option.
Yeah, well, that's kind of my feeling on the same. So I shoot. I haven't been the last couple weeks, so we've been really busy with school. But I try to shoot between 300 and 600 arrows a week, year round.
Yeah.
So I shoot a lot. That's
good, because it's a different story sitting in a blind in Africa. I mean, these animals are so wary, because a lion and leopard, they usually, or even crocodiles, they hunt from ambush from water, so around water or in water. So animals approaching a watering hole are really skittish. They move, stop, listen, look, smell, stop, listen, and it's not just they coming in, bang, making a shot. Okay, let's go take some pictures. They circle around trying to get the wind correct. They constantly on edge, like a little string that's consistently being pulled tight, and that puts you on the edge as well. I mean, you feel that at a bow hunting distance, you really feel that tension, and that gets your heart racing.
Quite an experience.
It sounds exciting. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I guess I've had a little bit of buck fever, not to the point where it stops me from doing anything, but I've never had to stop what I'm doing and be careful because I'm gonna fall out of the tree or anything like that. I'd be more, like when you're like, oh, when the blue wildebeest would come dusting through, and I reckon if you were sitting in the stand up there next to me, I think I'd be more worried that I have a pup tent in my pants and knock you out of the stand. Because I'd be like, woo!
Yeah.
I'd be in rut.
I'd be in rut. Something that usually happens post-shot. I mean, you try to suppress it beforehand, knowing that you must make a good shot. But it's usually something after the shot happens. I mean, it's just a bucket full of emotions coming through you, and it's something you can't contain.
So on this topic, actually, I think because you've now been in the business for a while, seen a number of clients. What are the pieces of advice that you'd give any client coming from the U.S., Europe, Australia, wherever, to help enhance their experience, but also to be good clients to you? Because that's the one thing that when I've talked to PHs or outfitters, I've heard them say, I love so and so. He's such a good client. What does that actually mean? And what advice would you give to people coming to Africa to hunt, to be good clients?
There's two very important topics. First of all, I'm not speaking for the Australian guys here now, but for the US clients, is our shot placement differs a lot from the US game. So we have to get everything a lot more forward and lower. So brushing up on your African shot placement before coming to a hunt really helps your tracker and your guide. So then you are a lot. So sometimes people would make a shot that they would feel is a very good shot, but then your guide looks at you and say, "Well, that's quite far back." And then so brushing up beforehand on shot placement in African game, that really can help um, for everybody's standpoint. And then the second thing is, which makes easy clients, is guys who are not very inch conscious. A good representative, an old animal with a good size is good enough. And not asking the guide consistently how much is he going to measure, how much is he Roland Ward, is he going to Safari Gold, is he the, that really makes our job of judging an animal a lot more difficult. I can tell you he's good, but I mean, I'm not going to say, well, he's 55.243 inches. So that's quite difficult. So guys who are not as inch conscious, and they say, well, if he's a good representative of the species and the shot is on, I'm going to take him. And that really helps from a guiding standpoint. That really helps. Because sometimes I would have a animal standing good, and then he's not a monster. He's not going to make any record books, but he's old, he's good, he's heavy, and he's standing at 20 yards in front of you. And that's usually something, rather take it than waiting on something that might not ever happen.
And I think that's an outstanding ethic from my perspective, because I felt very strongly the same way during my time there. The most frustrating clients we dealt with were the blokes that shot the animal, and the animal hadn't even hit the ground yet, and they've got the tape measure out and they're running over to kind of
that is
see how it's scored, and it just seemed to cheapen the whole experience.
True story.
It felt very.
And I always tell the guys,
so
you can really ruin a trophy with a measuring tape. I mean, if you shoot a 52-inch kudu, he's 1.5 inches away from a trophy record book. I mean, how does that matter? I mean, it's a monster of a kudu. 52 is not something you beat out of every bush. And so why mess that moment and that trophy up with 1 inch? I mean, it's not worth it.
Yeah, and I agree too. I mean, I saw a number of clients that were excited when the shot hit. They measured it up, and I actually found it not so much against like the record books, but against each other. So a guy was really proud of his. I think it was might have been a sable. I'm pretty sure it was a sable, and his mate had shot a sable the next day that was bigger, or had fatter base or something. And you could see, because he was in that mindset, that he was kind of disappointed in the trophy. And you're like, mate, you just stalked one of the most beautiful antelope on the planet. You've got a good representative of the species. You've done an outstanding shot, good placement, the whole shooting match, and you're now disappointed because your mate was just fortunate enough to do the same thing with something that happened big.
So, I mean, but for me personally, I don't attract those type of guys usually. That's not my client base. Because I hunt with guys who do free chase hunting back where they live, they understand the principle of chasing something on its turf. You're not going to shoot something that's a record book 9 out of 10 times. Usually the guys that are inch conscious, those are the guys that don't mind shooting something in a cage, because all they care about is the inches. It doesn't matter. So that's not the crowd that I usually attract. So usually I am blessed with guys that it's more about the chase of the animal than the size or the. So we always try to shoot mature animals. That's the correct word. Not trophy, but mature.
The last question, I'll hand you over to Stevo, is which tranquilizer do you prefer using when subduing the game for your clients? Because I think fentanyl is probably pretty good, but I think it might be coming out of fashion. Yeah. Any thoughts there, Niel?
Well, currently, because of the pricing of the tranquilizers, we kind of resort more to the ball and chain method.
Okay.
It just slows them down.
You got to be commercially astute.
Yeah, and you can really use. I mean, I get about 10 trophies out of one ball and chain before it really wears out. That really works for me in the long run. A lot more cost effective.
Excellent. See, it's that kind of commercial acumen that makes you an outstanding.
Yeah,
that's it.
And you can add, if it's still too fast, you can add weight. and if it's too slow, you can decrease in weight. So that really works. I mean,
yeah, make it more competitive.
Yeah.
See that? You know what? It's outstanding.
Just take it off before the client sees it.
No, of course not. Don't be ridiculous. You keep it on there, man.
Take a picture with it.
Yeah, you take it off. Yeah, you take it off before the photo, of course. But,
Right.
But that's
And the story, of course, you include that in the story. So
excellent. Steve-O, did you have something?
I do actually. You got me half, pissing myself over here laughing. But I've actually got something I do want to talk to you about. It's a little bit more on the serious side. So sorry to drop the momentum and the funniness. What I was going to ask you is, because you've been doing this for a while, and obviously you were born and raised in the bushlands of South Africa, and I was just wondering how media worldwide has affected your business with all the negative press from hunting in Africa, as well as how that's affecting the animals themselves, like as far as conservation with the animal.
yeah, well, that's probably a topic that can cover a whole podcast on itself. So I mean, what gets to the media most of the time is not on ground level. I mean, it's not the guys who benefit from it. That's kind of it just seems like all the bad stuff is the only thing that gets to the media. I mean, the guys who work for me, that really do the hard work of getting your trophy, cleaning your trophy, processing the meat. Those guys, they don't even have cell phones. No, I mean, they don't know what Facebook is. They don't know what Instagram is. I mean, most of them don't even have electricity. So those are not the guys you hear about. That's not the success story of a guy that benefits directly through income and through meat from your trophy. So mostly when I see media blowing something up, it's this guy who shot this and how can they do this to this species. But the bottom line is, if something does not have a monetary value, no one's going to protect that. No one gives us funding for our farm. Our farm is capitalist based. So that means we need money in to put back into the farm. The moment something is not making money, farmers will resort back to something that will make money, which is cattle or commercial game, maize farming. So they will kill all the game, destroy all the bush, put up irrigation fields, put up feedlots, put cattle in there. So we need to be able to sell a small portion of our game through hunting to be able to sustain our hunting areas, because that's the only way we're going to do it. Nobody else is going to give us any money to say, okay, here's money, keep the game, but don't hunt the game. No one is no one's going to do that. Everybody is quick to shove fingers in your face and say, how can you shoot this beautiful animal? And how can you do this? How can you do that? But give us money. Give us the income to provide land for these animals. Then, I mean, we would shoot a lot less. So animals pay for themselves. The small amount of trophy animals that we shoot each year pay for thousands and thousands of other game that live for many years, and most of them, honestly, they are being caught by a leopard or die of old age on the farm. And it's only a small sample of them that actually go onto the wall or onto the plate.
And if I can just jump in to add to that, one of the things that I often say to most anti-hunters or non-hunters who get upset about the African hunting scene or what they see is, of those animals that get taken for trophies, if we think about their life versus, say, the life of a cow in a commercial cattle operation, or the life of even those other game that starve and die of old age, they die a quick, clean, humane death compared to an animal that is old and can't compete and gets killed by another competing buck, or can't feed itself and dies of starvation and dies in cold weather when there's a cold weather snap and stuff. So even from a compassionate perspective, if you understand it, it actually makes more sense to have trophy hunting that results in quick, clean kills, small number of animals that fund the life of the rest of them. And I couldn't agree more with what you say. I think you've got to clear cogent point there.
Yeah, that's 100% correct. And you don't have to be a hunter to understand that principle. You don't have to contribute. You just have to understand that money needs to be made in a company, whether it's corporate or medical based or hunting based. Money needs to be made to be able to put money back into the company. Bottom line. That's the bottom line. If you
Yep.
like it or not, that's
Exactly.
the way it is.
Excellent.
If one of the arguments that I often see, and that I've even had people on social media say to me, is, well, why do you need to go and spend all the money over there? Why don't you just send your money over there to help with conservation as opposed to going over to hunt with conservation? That seems to be a lot of the argument. Like, hey, if you want to help these animals, why don't you just send your money over to conservation? I think that there's a really big conversation there, not just to explain to them why their thinking is somewhat ridiculous, but by understanding that, yeah, there's some rich guys that go over and hunt there, but the majority of the guys that go over and hunt Africa, they're regular kind of everyday guys, and they save for long periods of time. Which you know, we've been having this conversation that, you know, I'm trying to get over there to hunt with you, and that, you know, it takes a long time to save up enough cash to fly across the other side of the world, no matter what you're doing. It's not a cheap enterprise to do. So yeah, guys will save for 5 or 10 years to go on one of these hunts, and then you've got somebody saying, hey, why don't you just take that $20,000 and give it to somebody and not even worry about going? And so I guess for me, it's like, if I'm going to save for 5 years to do something that may only happen once in my life, then I don't understand why that's a bad thing, and why I can't enjoy that and get experiences that I will never forget. You know what I mean?
And I think the argument that I'll just give them the money, you still have to have a supply chain,
exactly,
and a commercial mechanism by which that money feeds out, and that relies on the animal dying. So
correct.
You're never going to have enough money to keep every animal alive and then feed skinners and trackers and everything else, even if you just gave them a handout. So the argument, I get what they're saying, and I think it comes down to, ultimately, why do you want to kill an animal? And mate, we don't have enough time in the next 2 years to cover that.
No, we don't.
But it is an important ethical question, right? And more, because I think as hunters, we all ask ourselves that. But what bothers me is that you'll have liberal, and I use the small L, liberal, lefty kind of latte sipping, sitting in London or New York or Sydney, who will decry hunting, who have no concept or even don't really care about the local African that is making their living based on that animal. And obviously the Afrikaners and all, you know, the wealthier populations in Africa as well that own the land and all the rest of it. But that's the thing that bothers me, is that there's a disconnect between those that are kind of virtue signaling about how horrible it is and those that are actually reliant on that. And it was the same thing years and years ago when they attacked fur coats. And what they realized is that the Inuit in Alaska and northern Canada suffered. And at the end, they didn't care because they could feel better about not killing seals. And to me, I think you hit it on the head, Neil, when you said it is a model that works. It is a model that supports a broad population, that actually doesn't hurt the conservation of the animal. In fact, protects it, because there's an economic value in something. It's not just somebody's little pet, right? It actually has a commercial value. So yeah, it's you know, I've heard this argument a lot, and I've heard the discussion. It's good to kind of hear the people that are in that industry, they're still comfortable with that argument and using it when confronted with this question. So very good stuff.
Yeah, from the hunter side, I mean, the argument concerning why don't you just give the money to them? I mean, the actual killing part is such a small part of the actual holiday, which is a holiday. You come to South Africa to experience a holiday, but you come for the culture, the weather, the food, the scenery, and the hunting. It's not just coming here and killing a bunch of stuff, getting on a plane back and going home. It's so much more of an experience from your side. From our side is sending the money, then yeah, I'm going to benefit and I'm going to put it back into my animals. But if you come over here, then there's a supply chain that's going to benefit all the way from the airline to the farm and everything in between.
Wow. Yeah, no, it's good stuff. one question I have that we actually covered, and I've got a very definitive ethical view on hunting, bow hunting particularly, one species. I've got a view that I'm not convinced about bow hunting of elephants. And I certainly don't have a view, I don't have a problem with hunting them with rifles, right? And the basis of my view is that given the anatomy of those animals and given how big they are, I'm not convinced that there's equipment, bow hunting equipment, that's strong enough to bust through ribs on an elephant and to ensure a quick, clean kill. What's your thoughts on that? Or do you have any? Have you thought about it?
So, yeah, that's a very good topic. I've never actually personally hunted elephant with rifle or with bow, but I know how it works. So firstly you have to understand when you shoot a animal with a bow and arrow, a smaller game animal, you puncture the lungs and the lungs collapse. So there's no more oxygen going to the brain and the animal dies within seconds. But with an elephant it differs. The lungs are too big for your arrow to physically collapse the lungs. So that animal, when you shoot it with a bow, the lungs still function and they die of blood loss, which is a bit different than shooting a smaller game animal. The term is called a pneumothorax. So that happens when the lung is punctured, the lung collapses. No more oxygen goes to the brain, animal dies within seconds. So it's not, most people think it's actually from blood loss. The animal bleeds out, which is not completely true. With the elephant it differs. So in that sense you are correct that there is an ethical side to it, because now you slowly killing that animal, which goes against our hunting ethics. But with a rifle, you can actually make a big enough hole, or you can do a brain shot, which is a lot more ethical. But again, I have never had first-hand experience with it, so it's very hard for me to give a opinion based on just the theory that I know.
Yeah. Okay. No, it's interesting. And again, I'm torn about it. I've been on a couple of different sides of that view, and it's just I'm always interested in people who are in the African scene, who obviously know as much as you do and are intimately involved in the biology as well as the commercial side of it, how they feel. So it's interesting because I've come to that position uncomfortably, right? Because I believe that you should be able to hunt anything,
Yeah.
and I'm generally very progressive when it comes to the circumstances in which you hunt something. But in this one, it just seems to me I couldn't get there from here. But with a 416,
Yeah.
right? I'm there, right? Right?
I'm not against it personally. Really, I'm not against hunting any species with bow and arrow, because again we come back to the fact that if you don't hunt that species, you are basically allowing that animal to die a much more horrific death, especially in lion. I mean, lions, they really, when they get old, their teeth get worn out and they really die of starvation. So now you got to ask yourself, is an arrow with blood loss, is that a lot worse than dying of starvation?
Oh yeah,
So
no, of course
personally,
not.
I'm
Yeah.
not against it. If someone wants to do an elephant with bow and arrow, I will set it up, I will guide it, I will do it as ethical as my moral values allow me to. But from your standpoint, I can understand why you would say it is a bit against your personal ethical line.
Yeah.
That I understand, but I'm not against.
It's an interesting topic,
hunting.
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. I get it.
Because we've had this conversation, and because and you and I have had this conversation as well, Neil, that my kind of dream is the big five with my bow, and so one thing we were talking about in a previous podcast was that Goody made the argument that the ribs on an elephant are like 4 inches thick, and that you're just if you get an arrow, it's not going to go all the way in far enough to hit vitals. And I said, well, okay, so why even fight with the rib cage? Why not just take the Texas heart shot, and that way you skip the rib cage altogether? And he made the argument that, well, the hole on a pelvis, and I made the argument that the hole on a pelvis on an elephant is ginormous.
Yeah.
And so, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well,
because this is
theoretically based. The rib thing is a lot of theory. Lately, people have been with bow hunting coming a long ways. Very, very like currently. We've actually did an elephant with rifle a few years back. I didn't guide. I was just an observer. And then on the dead carcass, before they processed the meat, they actually put the elephant on its side and tested different bow hunting setups. And all of the setups they tested at, let's say, 25 yards, they completely vanished arrows within that elephant with modern day bow hunting equipment. So we've come a long ways in slipping technology. That means when you hit a rib, the broadhead is designed to slip off that rib and not penetrate the rib. So we've come a long way in that technology that I would not worry about a broadside shot with a modern day technology buffalo setup on an elephant, because we took buffalo setups, and many of them, probably 5 different setups, and we shot shots into that elephant carcass, and we vanished arrows. We had no problem with penetration whatsoever.
Neil, were those circumstances where they hit ribs, or were they
so
shot
you would hit a rib, and then you will probably not penetrate a rib on an elephant, but you would hit a rib and the arrow would deviate slightly off of that rib. So most of the modern day broadheads that are not made to, they've got very blunt, well, blunt is not the right word, but rounded edges in the front to help them slip off of broadheads, off of rib. So especially in buffalo as well, because buffalo, they've got wide ribs, very wide ribs. So if you can do a good buffalo setup, I would be more than confident to do an elephant with just a little bit more weight in the arrow, because it's just more meat to penetrate. So just need a deeper arrow. So
yeah. Look, I mean, again, I'd have to look at some of the data there. I think, again, if the view is that the technology's changed, and I think in the conversation we had is part of my issue is I wasn't convinced that technology had gotten there. And my thinking would be that technology would change in terms of limb material or string material that would create greater force and speed, which would work against that. But if you're saying at the front end, the broadhead shape and structure has changed to minimize that risk of hitting the rib, then maybe, that's something to contemplate. Okay. Interesting.
And I've actually had a guy, he has a 2005 Bowtech Beast in 105 pounds.
Oof.
And then when I still worked at the archery shop, he bought the latest Bowtech Insanity back in 2012 at 80 pounds. And the Bowtech Insanity shot momentum, kinetic energy, and speed-wise a lot more efficiently than the 105 pound Beast.
Yeah,
and that's 7-8 years apart. And so you can get modern day equipment can really outperform bows that are 10 years behind, because bow hunting has come a long ways in the last 7 years. Anything pre-2010 was really, it wasn't as efficient as the modern day technology is now.
Okay, interesting conversation. Again, I still have my doubts and my reservations with elephants.
Yeah.
Bow, but I think you've got me thinking about it more from the front of the arrow rather than the bow itself. So it's interesting. Good stuff, mate. I like it.
And on arrows as well, they started making arrows that taper towards the backside as well. This is something that's been coming also for the past 10 years now. But technology has come a long way, where they argue that if you can hit a rib and you have to penetrate that rib with your broadhead, it's better for the arrow to be a lot thinner in the backside than in the front, because it lessens your resistance.
Yes.
So all these things are going to help you maybe 10% of the time, but adding up all these little 10% will greatly influence your success rate in the long run.
Interesting. Okay, great, good topic. Anything else? We've got.
I like it. Well, I know Neil's at work.
Yeah.
So we don't want to keep you too long. We just want to thank you for the opportunity that we had to have you on the show today, and thank you for taking time out of your busy day to have this conversation with us and talk about some pretty funny and some pretty serious issues. We want our listeners to know that we fully support Redsand Safaris, because you guys are ethical and moral, and you agree with all the things that we agree with, and we feel that you're a worthwhile company to work with. And so we will be doing that. And so look out for our commercials for Redsand Safaris. It's got the email address. You can get a hold of us directly, and we are happy to help you out getting your hunt over there with Niel and his crew over in South Africa.
Right, and it's and Niel, it's been fantastic. It's been fantastic talking to you, buddy. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for Stevo and Billy for having me all the way from South Africa on your show. And yeah, welcome to the team.